Well, welcome to the Shepherd Hearted Leader podcast, where we explore topics that help strengthen your ability to care for those under your leadership. Now, today we have Pastor Darin Poli in the studio with us, and I'm so excited to have a conversation with him. Pastor Darin Poli has been on staff at Emmanuel since 2019. He has a wealth of experience. He has a heart for kingdom builders, generosity, stewardship. He currently oversees our location pastors and kingdom builders, and he's on the directional team. And so we're so excited to hear everything that he has to say. He is passionate about helping churches grow in generosity and in their kingdom builders and in strategy. So Pastor Darin, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
We're excited that you are here. And so I guess I just want to begin, just give people a little idea of your background and how you came to know the Lord. We'll start there. Let's just start at the beginning. How did you come to know the Lord, and how did you end up in ministry?
Yeah, great question. You know, I grew up in Minnesota, lived in the Twin Cities and the south suburbs for pretty much my whole life, other than times at Bible school and a few other great churches that we served at. I was raised in a liturgical church, so I wasn't raised in a church like Emmanuel or other evangelical churches. And during that era, there was a charismatic renewal that went through a lot of the Lutherans and Catholic churches and stuff in Minnesota. So when I was a teenager, almost 17 in high school, I went to a retreat, not knowing anything about Jesus. And I heard a guy for the first time share his testimony. I'd never heard a man over the age of 25 share about giving their life to Christ. So long story short, listened that, and it just really impacted me because I didn't know I knew about religion, but I didn't know about relationships. So that night at that retreat, I made a commitment and I prayed a salvation prayer, said, God, I need forgiveness, and Jesus, I give you the rest of my life, not even really knowing what that meant, but it was amazing, even reflecting back on it, because it truly changed my life. And I had to change a lot of things, friends and other stuff. But that's how I began in this faith journey when I was 17 years old.
And how did you end up in ministry? What did that look like?
Yeah, another fun story. A lot of my story is connected to camps and youth camps and retreats. I went to my first ever youth camp, heard a speaker talk about Bibles to China and reaching the unreached. Uh-huh. He gave an altar call. And I don't know that other than the day I gave my life to Christ that I'd ever responded to an altar call. I'd been a Christian less than 1 year. And he said, whoever's willing to commit at least 1 year of your life to ministry, I want to ask you to come down to the front. And I was not sitting in the front. I was sitting more towards the back. And for some reason, I just got up and I found myself standing down front. And I made that commitment. I kind of forgot about it for 6 to 9 months. And then shortly after that, I found myself at Bible college, really felt called into youth ministry, really had a heart for missions in the world, even kind of responding to that altar call. So that's kind of where it all started, and kind of some mentors in my life that just stirred that. And then I honestly fell in love with the church and fell in love with people in the church and seeing other young people get radically saved. Did a lot of stuff on high school campuses and ministry. It's actually where I met my wife. She was a high school campus leader, and that's where we met. And she's been an incredible blessing.
And how long have you been married?
Wow, that's a hard one. We've been married 36 years.
36 years.
36 years. We got married young, like really young. So anyways, we've been married 36 years. We have 3 daughters, 3 sons-in-laws, and 4 little grandchildren.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So amazing. So you had talked about starting out in youth ministry. What other kinds of ministry have you done? You've got quite a variety. I think you've done it all, haven't you?
Yeah, I like to say, I've served in not a lot, probably 4 or 5 churches over 30 plus years, but I've served in so many great churches, including the one I'm in now at Emmanuel. We've been so blessed to serve with great leadership, pastors with vision, wanting to reach people, wanting to disciple people. So because of that, I've served for many, many years, 14 years as a youth pastor.
Oh, wow.
I've served as an executive pastor for almost 13 years. I served as a campus pastor for 3 years, a number of years ago, almost 18 years ago, when multi-site wasn't as popular. I got to try that for 3 years at a church they were stepping into multi-site here in Minnesota. And then I served as a lead pastor. Jane and I planted a church and were lead pastors for 6 years. So some of what I get to do even around the country is interact with a lot of staff. And most of the staff that I get to interact with or coach with, I've been in those roles. So I've worn hat number 2 for a lot of years, understand it, and but I wouldn't trade any of it. The experiences has been incredible.
So talk a little bit about what you're doing at Emmanuel, and then also a lot of people may not know that you have a consulting ministry outside of this. So talk about what you're doing at Emmanuel and outside.
Yeah. I actually shared this with Pastor Nate. In a way, I kind of have the dream job at Emmanuel because I get to lead what I'm passionate about. So I'm in the weeds. I get to work the details of Kingdom Builders. That's our, we can talk more about that, but that is our partners, our projects, our giving, our generosity, sending money out to reach the world, to reach the nation. And so I get to lead that, the strategy of it, and Pastor Nate and I collaborate on the big parts of the vision. But that's a big part of my time here, and I love it. And then I also get to work with our location pastors, and we have 4 locations. And so they're 4 great leaders, great families, young leaders, many of them that are kind of year 5, 6, 7, 10 of ministry, and really love to help our campus or our location pastors grow. And so I just work with them and their teams a little bit. And then I serve with Pastor Nate on our directional leadership team, as you mentioned. And that's kind of our executive team. And there's several of us on there that helps kind of represent and helps kind of talk about and process and plan some of the bigger picture vision pieces from our lead pastor's office and key initiatives for the church, and work with some incredible people that are part of that as well. So that's what I mean. It's kind of the dream job. And then Pastor Nate gives me the freedom to coach and consult with some other churches. So I have 5 partner churches that I get to connect with around the country and help mainly in the area of kingdom builders or multi-site or kind of strategic thinking, coaching lead pastors, and that's a joy. So I feel blessed to do that.
So what kind of areas do you do coaching in?
Yeah, specifically, probably the greatest request is, could you help us with generosity, with our giving, with kingdom builders? The second piece would be help us remove barriers to growth. That's how I describe it. I love that. I love it at Emmanuel. I love it at other churches of how, if we did this and this, could we grow? Could we reach more people? Could we disciple more people? Could we reach more kids? And I don't have the only answer. I'm a voice, but I love strategizing about that. So that then opens the door to even thinking of our podcast. There's a lot of lead pastors that are lonely out in church work, don't have a friend, a confidant that's sat in their shoes, that's sat in their seat, that's walked through things. So God's allowed us to be trusted voices. Even our season of life, we're not super young. And so I love that we can be a voice, even just a friendship voice to lead pastors as they navigate big things, because lead pastors face a lot of spiritual attack. Oh, yeah. There's a lot that comes at all ministers, but lead pastors especially. And so I think helping cover that usually comes out of those practical things. So last thing I'll mention about that, in case you ask other questions, the churches I partner with, most of them I've partnered with for 3 or more years. Okay. So I don't do a few months or a few weeks. I like to go longer in relationship. And so obviously we become friends and do life together, which is great.
Yeah, it really feels like it's a multiplying season for you, where God has just taken all of your talents and all of your experience from all the years leading up to now, where you're multiplying it into other places, and that's so exciting to see. Yeah. You've been at Emmanuel for just over 5 years. What kind of changes and what kind of challenges have you seen since you've come here?
Yeah, Emmanuel, we've added a location, so we've grown in multi-site. The complexity of multi-site for us for Emmanuel, and learning central ministries and how to what happens at locations and what's directed by the whole church, and even our staff learning that and growing in that. It's been exciting to see, but it's been big changes because every great church learns that stuff. It's not inherent, because for so long most of us have done church in one location and stuff. And I know multi-site's very popular around the nation, but it's fairly young in church world, where it's really become prevalent the last 10, 15 years. I think also for us, our staff in church is getting younger, which in one way is a good thing. In another way, I've noticed the last 5 years, there's just a lot of extra voices out there. Yep. A lot of people telling our young pastors, our young staff members, how to think, what to do. Some of it's good, but some of it just can be overload, whether it's coming to their phones or iPads, wherever it's coming through social media. So to me, that has really increased. Again, it's not that that's all bad. I just think there's a lot of it. And so one of the things I love at Emmanuel is this Pastor Nate and our team is always calling for, let's ask God what he's saying. Let's listen to his voice. So we value outside voices. We value stuff we see on podcasts and blogs and stuff like that. But we're also saying, God, what are you saying? So, but if I were to say some of the big changes, it's been multi-site, but I think they're fun changes, even though there's challenges in there. Funding multi-site, it's expensive. Every key initiative is expensive. But also seeing just our young team rise up to the challenge and learn that there's a lot of voices out there. There's a lot of people call themselves experts, but also say that, hey, there's the Holy Spirit, there's God, that we need to hear his voice. And that's been exciting to see as well.
I'd say for sure, Emmanuel has grown in generosity through Kingdom Builders. We've seen a lot of growth in that area. A couple things that are fun things about you that maybe people don't know. Nate and I love getting advice from you, especially like travel and deals and things like that. What's your best travel hack?
Well, one of the best ones is a website called The Points Guy. And then my other travel hack is I'm smiling, you're smiling, because I love to help pastors save money. Oh, wow. Because I grew up in ministry. I remember a youth pastor salary and stuff. So part of it's about saving money and yet still enjoying life. And the best travel hack is to tell any leader to pursue loyalty with two things: an airline and a hotel, one of each. Not 5 different ones, just pursue status, if you will, with one airline and one hotel. If you do that for 4 or 5 years, you're going to see your opportunities for free travel, discounted travel, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to sound too materialistic. So that's one of the travel hacks. But I've learned that from the Points Guy and other people like that.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, when we're traveling, doing some traveling, and I always give you credit. I'm like, Pastor Darin taught us this. This is, all the different hacks. But I know we've got the bacon, egg, and cheese thing in common from McDonald's. But
from the app.
Yeah, I've been doing better. I haven't been going to McDonald's as much, getting our free bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit.
That's awesome.
Okay, shifting gears. Let's talk about some of the areas that you are expert in, like Kingdom Builders, Stewardship, Generosity, and Dashboards. Let's start out with Kingdom Builders. Let's talk about what is Kingdom Builders and how did you gain such a passion for it?
Yeah, how I gained a passion for it. There's a lot of great churches around the country doing Kingdom Builders. A lot of places, people learn from Emmanuel. People are learning from other great churches as well. God's just using it. My passion comes from, once in a while, somebody will ask me that question, hey, why do you love Kingdom Builders so much? And I may get a little excited about it even right now as I talk about it. I really believe it's the greatest Great Commission funding tool available. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm. I believe there's no better tool to fund and resource the Great Commission. I believe there's other tools. I don't think Kingdom Builders is the only model, but I truly believe it's the best model. And so that's why I'm excited about it. To me, it's all about reaching more people. It's all about fulfilling the Great Commission. So what is it? We would call Kingdom Builders is all of our above the tithe giving. Giving that's beyond the tithe, above the 10%, would be Kingdom Builders. And we utilize that for global missions for local church expansion, and for future Christian leaders. So those would be the 3 buckets of projects. Again, there's some other really good churches that have that as well and are seeing God use it in incredible ways. We are seeing God use it in incredible ways as well. So if a pastor says to me, "Hey, what's the fastest or most effective way to resource missions, or maybe to expand a local church, or to help young adults and 20-somethings or youth, scholarship them to go on mission trips, or scholarship them in ministry things?" I'd say Kingdom Builders, because it's so amazing. And there's a lot to Kingdom Builders. There's a lot of strategy, a lot of how-to. I don't know that we'll have time to go into it today, but there's so much there. But that's what I'm passionate about.
We'll get a little bit of that strategy, hopefully. I've here, at least at Kingdom Builders at Emmanuel, there's 3 facets of Kingdom Builders. It's giving, going, and praying. Talk about the role of each of those and how it plays together.
Yeah, giving's the obvious one. The 3 areas, giving, going, and praying. Giving is, we encourage everybody in the church to be a part of Kingdom Builders. We don't force it, we encourage it. We hopefully inspire it as well. And so the giving is the financial piece. We would ask everybody to pray, everybody to ask God, what do you want me to do this year? We believe there's power in unity. So whether it's the young person or the child that gives $50 a year, and the business owner that gives $100,000 a year or more, everybody in between, the power's in the unity, because it's kind of that Acts 2 thing when they're all in one accord. Mm-hmm. So we've seen that in generosity, and it's amazing. People in the body, people in the church that love God, they get inspired and they want to resource the Great Commission. They want to resource the partners that we have across the U.S., across our own city, and around the world. So that's amazing. That's the giving piece. The going piece is teams. That's a huge discipleship piece. There's other areas of discipleship as well, but when somebody, man or woman, young person, goes on a team, there's something that takes place. I describe it like a youth camp or a youth retreat. Sometimes you'd say in youth ministry, hey, if you can get a kid to go to a week of camp, that's like 50 weeks of Wednesday night service. Mm-hmm. Well, if you can get somebody to go on a Kingdom Builders team, which is a short-term missions trip, again, to a place, we just had teams get back from Alaska, team just got back from El Salvador. So any trip that's a week or longer, ours are usually a week to 2 weeks. It's like they've been immersed in that calling like a student would be at camp. And we've just seen that expedited. By the way, just if you like data a little bit, we've seen that those that go on Kingdom Builder trips, those that go on short-term trips, they're often the most generous people in the church. Yep. Because they've caught the heart of it, and now they're giving in generosity above the tithe because they want to, and they've seen where it's landed. Praying is the third piece. Even something that's kind of exciting, we're in year 2 of launching a Kingdom Builders prayer team. I think God kind of put that in my heart, and it was really out of the heart of Emmanuel to be a house of prayer for all nations. I was praying, Lord, how does Kingdom Builders even support that more? And we wanted to send the message that Kingdom Builders isn't only about dollars, because it's not. If we aren't praying for the Holy Spirit to move in with our projects, with our global workers, with our partners around the world, the effectiveness is going to be limited. So we started a Kingdom Builders prayer team, and it's grown. I mean, it started with like 20, then it went to 36. Now I think it's a little bit over 130 or 150. I know that's not a lot of people for a large church, but that's awesome for intercessors, because not everybody wants to sign up to pray. So we just stay connected with them every month. We have a prayer focus. We want to pray through all of our partners, all of our projects, cover them at least once a year, in addition to some other things we do with prayer. So
I think that's one of the things that I've appreciated the most about you jumping into Kingdom Builders, besides the strategy, is how you vet the projects and the people that we're supporting, and maybe talk about how those projects and people are vetted.
Yeah, great question. We have the specific, we get a lot of applications, and there may be other pastors listening to this right now, this podcast, and the good thing is once you start giving a lot generously to missions, again, in your state or in the country or around the world, you get to be known for that. Yeah. And missionaries of all sorts will start to reach out to you. So we get a lot of applications.
And do they refer their friends too?
A lot of times, and family members and everybody else. But that's what they're supposed to do, right? Yep. Ultimately, our heart would be, we'd love to support everybody, but we get a lot of applications, dozens and dozens, sometimes every couple months. We look at our missionary partner applications twice a year. Otherwise, we'd be looking at them almost every week. And we sit down and we go through them and we if you will, score them based on what is needed from Emmanuel to stay healthy in missions. And then for them, we look at, do they have a connection to our church? We look at, like, maybe they used to come to our church. Maybe they have family members in our church. Maybe, which is really exciting, we're starting to see missionaries be sent out from our church. So that would score them high. We look at also if they're part of our network of churches. Are they part of the Assemblies of God? Are they part of Minnesota? Are they part of, not that they're excluded if they're not, yep. but just are they in that? And then the third thing we look at is what part of the world or the nation are they going to, and are we already heavily represented there? And if we are, if we already have 4 missionaries in Honduras and we get another application, but we don't have any missionaries in El Salvador, it's not that missionary's fault, but we believe God's called us to be healthy and holistic. So we just want to be good stewards with all the Kingdom Builders dollars that's given. So then we take a look at that, again, pray. Pastor Nate and I sometimes will review that list and just and look at where should we go. The last thing we look at is unreached people groups. We know we don't only give to unreached people groups, but we realize that we're going to have to do a little more there than some of the other places in the world that we've already been for a long time. So we're continually trying to measure that so we make sure that we've increased our unreached people groups without excluding other missionary partners. But even if we can't take on a partner right away, or we have to delay, or we say we just can't do it at this time, we honestly try to get back to them, because a lot of missionaries don't hear back from churches. We're not perfect at it, but we try to get back to them, let them know, hey, thank you, we're praying for you, so that they hear some clarity from our side as well.
Yeah. What's the most exciting project that we're doing from your perspective?
Wow. That's a great question. There's one of the things we do, we partner with a ministry that's dear to your heart called Free International, which has just had the hand of God on it in rescuing and finding people that have been trafficked, that have run away. And they're just amazing. You can look them up online and find out more information on them, which is incredible. We're going to do a really significant project with Project Rescue this year. They'll be part of our miracle offering. They'll be here in November, and they're trying to set up 2 new rescue centers in Europe that we get to fund and help fund and be a part of. So it's not one. The third one is our church loves an organization called Venture. They're local. They're part of Minnesota, and they do things for Christ in the hardest places in the world. And that really resonates with us. So that's a hard question, Jodi, because we've got like 40 projects, but I love those. It's a great question too.
So amazing. I really appreciate how much you've challenged me personally since you've been here. As far as, I remember there was a staff retreat that we had, and you challenged the entire staff. How many of you have not been on a Kingdom Builders trip? And then stand or whatever. Yeah. If you've been on a Kingdom Builder. And a lot of us hadn't. None of us were staying. I mean, I wouldn't say none of us were staying, but a lot of us weren't. And I thought, I am going to go on a Kingdom Builders trip before Darin asked that question again. Yeah. And so I've made it. I've gotten out. Yeah, I did it. I got out on a Kingdom Builders trip. And then also when it comes to being generous in Kingdom Builders, because I have so much trust in how things are being vetted, my giving to Kingdom Builders through Emmanuel has gone up. And I remember the first time giving an amount for a year and then praying about it, and you kind of challenge, prayed about it and then doubled it. And I would say from the time that we were giving in missions till now, it has gone up 5 times. Yeah. So that's since you've been here too. So I just appreciate you challenging us in that way. Okay, so now let's, I guess one other question I want to have about Kingdom Builders. How have you seen it grow at Emmanuel since you've been leading it?
Yeah, it's we have had the hand of God in our church that's been on Kingdom Builders. There's no doubt. It's hard because we don't want to answer this self-serving in any way, right? For us or Pastor Nate or our location pastors, what I've seen happen is so many more of our staff, so many more of our pastors have also gained a passion for it. Honestly, a lot of people in our church have it now. So it's grown so much like that. So the result of that is, yes, our generosity numbers have grown tremendously, 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years. So that's amazing. And I think that's awesome for churches of 50 or 100 or 1,000 or 3,000 or what. I think any size church can, and I think God uses churches of all sizes. I do. I think any size can see that exponential growth, even with the simple strategies that we do through Kingdom Builders. So again, it sounds kind of like a pitch for Kingdom Builders, I know, but that's why I'm passionate about it, because it can work in any environment. Single staff churches, bivocational pastors, or pastors with a large team that are working with them.
And what do you think about businesses who maybe want to increase in generosity? Can they do something like that too, where they're giving?
Yeah, there's businesses periodically that have said, hey, we want all of our profit this month to go to Kingdom Builders. It's just amazing, because what happens is when we put vision out in front of people, they also have vision that God's put in their heart, and they start to look at it and say, how can I jump on this vision with what God has given me to steward? So they're stewarding a cleaning company or electrical company or something else they're doing. And next thing you know, they're like, hey, we want to be a part of this. So once in a while, and we would welcome more of these, once in a while, they're like, we want to adopt our business to take on that project. And it's a large project. So we've seen that a few times, and our prayer is that we would see it even more. And again, we may talk about this later. I love it because people do it with a smile on their face. They're not like begrudgingly giving, just like you just described your own generosity journey. You're like, you're fired up about it. It's a blast. That's how Jane and I feel. Jane's my wife. That's how we feel. It's a blast, and we are still blessed, but it's amazing.
And it's amazing when God gives you seed to sow, and then He provides bread to eat it. It's really fun when we get a testament in this.
Totally.
Okay, let's talk about stewardship and generosity. You've got a definition. You kind of touched on it earlier, but just swing back at it. What is the difference between definition of generosity that's different than tithing, and can you explain the difference?
I think there's 3 types of giving. There's obedient giving, generous giving, and legacy giving.
Yep.
That's just how I like to describe it. There's maybe other ways, but obedient giving is those that are faithful tithers, and that fits even with our verbiage, right? Generous giving is those that have committed to giving above the tithe. If people say, what does that look like? I would say 15%, that you're tithing 10%, and maybe you're giving 5% above the tithe to Kingdom Builders, to generosity, to support projects and partners. By the way, that's the phrase I like to use, projects and partners. It's not just one or the other. We support both around the U.S., around the world. And legacy giving would be those that really have learned and exercised the muscle of generosity, have found the joy of generosity. And oftentimes, people need a target to shoot for. I would say that is 20% or more. And I say, more, because there's people that I'm humbled by, that I try to let speak into my life, that are doing way more than that. We try to be there or beyond, but I have friends that God's led them, and they're inspirational to me. And what's amazing, Pastor Jodi, is that people that give like that, they're so blessed. Yep. They're so happy. They're full of joy. I don't even mean they're always material blessed, but they're usually God takes care of everything. So, but I like that teaching side of obedient giving, generous giving, legacy giving. At my season of life, I'll say, who doesn't want a kingdom legacy? Just to be a part of what their journey is. So Jane and I have some generosity goals. Yep. That we have for our life, and we don't proclaim them to everybody, but we know what they are, even in our planning for our future and our kids and our grandkids. But we're planning for what we want to do for the kingdom too. And again, I think regardless of our income, we would want to do that.
Yep.
And when we do it, we kind of get excited, and it does affect our spending decisions a little bit.
You cut out more coupons.
Yeah. Yeah. We just find the travel hacks and the right food apps and stuff like that.
I'm going to give this to Kingdom Builders instead.
Exactly. Yeah. So
obviously that message stood out to me in a big way when you preached it, because I had been a part of churches that felt like they were all about money all the time. And so it gave me a parameter. I thought, wow, I can do 5% above the tithe. That just seems like
totally
nothing. And then that's generous. And then even going legacy is 10% above the tithe. For me, it was super freeing and gave me a goal to really shoot for.
I love it.
So that's probably what kind of helped up our giving a little bit. You start praying. I'm going, because I've been a part of places where you feel like it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
And when someone can define what is enough, that really helps.
And Pastor Jodi, if I can say, as you talk about that, even as you're talking about your own journey, I just, again, because there's a lot of church leaders and Christian leaders and pastors that listen to the podcast, I think it's so special when pastors and leaders share about their generosity journey, because I think everybody's on a generosity journey. And I call it a journey because we're all on it together. And I just think I don't mean share the dollar amount necessarily, but the fact that, hey, God's moving in our hearts, and here's what we're doing, and here's how we're stirring. I feel it's invitational, and people love their leaders. At least in a lot of great churches, people love their leaders and they're inspired by them. So I'm glad that you and Pastor Nate and others, our location pastors, sorry, we've changed that name the last year or two. So campus pastors and location pastors, they've started to learn that as well. And I see people in the church admiring that. And then I'm hearing some of our leaders use that language, and they're inspiring. And it's not about necessarily the dollar amount. It's about that we're in this together. So thanks for being a leader that does that.
So good. You have developed 6 foundations of stewardship. What are they, and can you kind of explain it?
Yeah, the 6 foundations of stewardship. I'm going to grab my notes here so I don't go too long on it, because it's a teaching I do that is probably 30, 40 minutes long, but we'll just do the highlights here real quick, and I'll give you these 6, knowing that we could drill down on a lot of these. But maybe they'll resonate. They'll speak to your heart. I call them foundations because these don't change in our Kingdom Builders model. The other reason we call them foundations is we go back to them. You'll hear in this that they're kind of guidelines that we stick to. Not that we're perfect, but we'll do our best to stick to these guidelines. And so that's why we call them 6 foundations of stewardship. So the first foundation is the call or the mission. I just use the call and the mission. So that's the foundation. We've got to be clear on, why are we doing this? What's the reason? The call, the mission, it's always got to be first. Most of us probably know that, but it's that what could be, what should be, what must be. That's the call, the mission. So the Great Commission is our call. And so that's the first thing. The second one is we already talked about this, so I won't go long. We'll clearly communicate the difference between obedient giving, which is the tithe, and generous giving, which is above the tithe. So you see, that's even one of our 6 foundations, even as we talked about it for a few minutes earlier. So that's the second one. And I even used examples of how verbiage we would use to describe that in a life-giving way. The third foundation is key donors deserve and need to be pastored well. Yep. Key donors. Now, this can be tricky for church leaders because something in our past or in our journey might say, are you saying we're going to give preference to those people? No, we're not saying we're going to give preference. No. We're saying we're going to pastor. Just like we would somebody that's gifted at teaching children or gifted at playing guitar. So key donors oftentimes, whether they lead businesses or whatever, sometimes don't have a lot of connection to pastors and leaders. And my heart is that we would know and grow in our heart for how to pastor people of means, of all ages, male and female. So that's why the verbiage is very important, that key donors, we didn't say just top givers, we said key donors, deserve and need to be pastored well. In my journey, because this is a lane that I love, I'm in relationship and conversation. Sometimes these conversations find me. Other ones that have big legacy desires. And I have found out that they're some of the least pastored people in our churches.
Wow.
Because they're so busy and they're running fast, and maybe they're not at every event, but also sometimes younger staff and leaders don't know how to interact with them because they see them as so successful or something. But in reality, they have prodigal kids.
Yep.
They have hurting marriages. I get choked up because they need a pastor to come alongside them. So when I say pastor them, when I meet with key donors, I'll ask them, what can I pray with you about? I'm not asking them for money all the time. It is pastoring that. And I want our church to know, and all of our pastors, that they need it and they deserve it. And then just like we would with somebody that's gifted in other areas. That's the third one. The fourth one is, and I have in my notes, this requires, I know, a lot of conviction and a lot of courage to do this one. But the fourth foundation is big margin creates trust and fuels big vision. So big margin creates trust and fuels big vision. So I tell church leaders, if you can be a good steward with your operational budgets and have margin and not kind of live to the max, and where you're waiting on the next weekend's giving, and the same thing happens in a Christian business as well. But if you have large margin, your annual reports, and you're showing that, hey, we were in the black, and so we surplused 12% this year or whatever, that creates trust with the givers in your church or in our church. And then it also, for the leaders, like the leaders, our pastors, our shepherds, it fuels big vision.
Yep.
Because they see that, wait, there's resources available to touch more, to disciple more, to reach more, do more with connect groups, do more with local outreach, do more. And that's a principle. It could probably be in Financial Peace University as well. Yeah. I get it. But that's the fourth one. And there's just so much there. Fifth one is this. I'll show the last two really quick. We will teach and speak tithing and generosity as a get to, not a have to. So we've just decided as a church that we're going to speak about and teach about tithing and generosity as a get to, not a have to. You get to do this, not you better do this or else. Yep. And we believe that's biblical because it is a call to great things. It's a call to joy. It should be one of the most enjoyable things we do. So we would say, hey, if you take the offering, smile, just enjoy it, have fun with it, because it is a get to. And the last one is very practical. And we've been doing this at Emmanuel, I think 4 years now. We will do a weekend giving or stewardship series. So a teaching series, a sermon series, 3 to 4 weeks long, every 12 to 16 months. Yep. So we just kind of have a rhythm. We've been doing it about every 12 months, but 12 to 16 works. Usually churches, once they've started this, they really see results. Now, again, the whole series isn't about giving, but it's about living on mission. Generosity is a part of it. We incorporate a lot of times our Miracle Offering Sunday into that, so it's right in it. But those are our 6 foundations.
What you kind of touched on this earlier, but what is your commitment to generosity personally, and what difference have you seen it make in your life? Yeah,
we have. It's tricky to talk about this, to talk about your own giving specifically. We have a similar story to yours personally that Jane and I have learned generous giving and moved on to legacy giving for a number of years now. And we just really get excited we just get excited. And we have seen God's faithfulness so strong in our lives. So personally, practically, we've decided we're going to be at that legacy level or beyond for the rest of our years. And we've recently, I won't go into the detail, we've recently created some, kind of end of life stuff and, will and trusts and stuff. And we've included our heart for generosity in that just because we want our kids to know. We met with our children, all of our children, our daughters and our sons-in-laws last year, and we gave each of them a copy. And we just said, hey, we want you to know our heart for this. and they weren't all like, give us all the money, or and it's not like we're not even that wealthy, but just we wanted, no matter where we're at when we go home to heaven or Jesus comes back or whatever, we want those closest to us to know our heart for generosity and to execute on those wishes. And that was a powerful time. Our kids were crying in our living room, and because we want to love and bless our children, our grandchildren. That's biblical to leave an inheritance for them as well. But that's how it's really changed us. So then I cry more than I used to because God's got a hold of my heart. I can't believe sometimes what we get to be a part of. When I think of, we started off as just young youth pastors in a little church, serving 25 students, and what we get to do now. And I want to say thank you, because I've worked with, again, some incredible pastors over the years that have stretched this in me. And some of you know who you are, and it's been a huge part. So Jane and I feel very blessed in that.
All right. Well, we don't have a whole bunch of time left, but I want to just touch on dashboards.
Yeah.
You've helped bring dashboards to Emmanuel. I know you bring those to the churches you consult with. What are they, and why are they important?
Yeah, dashboards are basically, I call them ministry dashboards. So they are, in the marketplace, they use the phrase KPI, key performance indicators. So sometimes in church work, we can bristle against marketplace stuff a little bit, but they are ministry dashboards. There's a passage of scripture, Proverbs 27:23, that tells us to know the state or the condition of your flock. My question to church leaders is, how do you know the condition and the state of your flock if you don't know your true metrics about where you're at? Are you growing? Are you flatlined a little bit? Are you declining? And this isn't just giving and attendance, that's two of them, but it's also in discipleship. It's also in serving. It's also in youth ministry and kids ministry. So we at Emmanuel, we have, all of our location have dashboards. We measure 10 or 11. I think this year we're doing 11 ministry gauges, and we look at them quarterly, not weekly, not daily. We look at them every 3 months. It's because we don't want to be like, it's not dominating our lives, but we just sit down and take a look, see what God's doing. And what I encourage people, what I love about dashboards, it shows us where we need to give our attention and our best bandwidth to. The second thing, it also shows us what God's doing. Yep. Because every quarter, there's always, actually many of the gauges, we're winning. God's winning. And we get to celebrate that. Like we get to celebrate with a departmental kids pastor or a location pastor. Like, it's amazing. Look at all the decisions. We have commitments to Christ that we track. Look at all the people that have given their lives to Christ. So that is it. But I've noticed, and the reason I believe in it is a lot of times we're not the best at measuring metrics. Churches are good at counting the offering and maybe counting Sunday attendance, but we would add about 8 other metrics to that really see, hey, are we healthy in the areas that God's helped us to be healthy on? So anybody that's done a strat op or something like this is kind of like some action item that really lives within the ministries of the church. And then I believe then we can know the state of our flocks. So Kingdom Builders is one of our gauges, yep. All that. So.
And it really does couple with being a good steward and using resources wisely and paying attention to things. So as we wrap up here, you're a strong leader who likes to see results. What are some of the challenges you face when working with others?
Yeah, I think, what I've noticed in church work, what I see on our team, what I see in other teams, even in my giftings, the lanes I flourish in, and watching how other leaders are gifted in other areas. Some people would say that, I think of also the phrase shepherd-hearted, which is the title of this podcast. And how do these things kind of align? How do they come together? How do they complement and not work against each other? There's multiple people that have taught on this that believe that it's kind of an oversimplification. I know it is that, but they say, hey, ministry leaders fall into 2 categories. Either they're relational or they're results oriented. Either they're relational oriented or they're results oriented. While I agree that a lot of leaders maybe naturally land in one of those lanes, I don't believe a shepherd-hearted leader can be one or the other. I think we need to be both. I think if we're strong results-oriented leaders, I can lean that way often. I need to care about relational orientation as well. For the leaders in church work or the leaders that serve in nonprofits that are part of the podcast you're strong at relationships. You're just great at it. Everybody knows you got such a caring heart. You also, you're just not the person that's into metrics and numbers and watching growth. You need to grow in that area. Because I think of these things. I think of it, how powerful would the church be if leaders valued both types, if a leader valued both types of people. It's almost like an Enneagram, or it's almost like Myers-Briggs or whatever, but it's oversimplified. And I feel like when a shepherd-hearted leader sees value in both types of leaders, I think their ministry is going to win. And when they see that, man, we need men and women that are relational oriented, and we need men and women that are results oriented, and we want both of them, regardless of what lane they're in, to care about the other lane. Yep. I think the church is going to fulfill its mission. And so I get excited about that. And that's what I wanted to share real quick. Yeah.
You have a unique gift set. And I remember years ago just telling Nate, we've had a lot of great staff. We have a lot of great staff. I just would say you need someone like Pastor Darin.
Oh, that's very kind.
It was just amazing that the Lord sent you here for such a time as this. So thank you for making a difference. Yeah. I know we talked a lot about stewardship and things, but you've got so many awesome strategy ideas and things like that. You've made a big difference. So thank you so much for your time today. What a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us with this conversation. If you liked this episode, please share it with others. We always love to hear your comments. We'll leave some resources in the description. And as always, keep leading well.